What if I told you there was a tennis player who spent every night in Moscow's nightclubs but still destroyed the world's greatest champions? A player who smashed over 1,000 rackets in anger yet reached #1 in the world. Someone who defeated both Pete Sampras at his peak and Roger Federer during his unstoppable prime, winning 2 Grand Slam titles while living a lifestyle that would end most careers. This is the story of Marat Safin, the Russian fire who refused to be a tennis robot. While his rivals obsessed over practice and discipline, Marat was partying until dawn, showing up hungover to matches and still hitting winners that left legends speechless. To understand how he achieved greatness while breaking every rule in the book, we need to go back to Moscow in 1980, where a tennis dynasty was just beginning. Marat Safin was born on January 27, 1980 in Moscow, Russia, and tennis wasn't something he chose, it was in his blood. His father, Mikhail, was a legendary Soviet tennis coach. His mother, Rausa, was also a tennis coach. Even his younger sister, Dinara, would eventually become a world #1 player herself. This was a family where excellence wasn't optional. From age 6, young Marat was training at Moscow's Spartak Tennis Club, surrounded by future stars like Anna Kournikova and Elena Dementieva. But there was something different about Marat. He had raw power that coaches had rarely seen. At 6 feet 4 inches with explosive athleticism, he could hit forehands that sounded like gunshots. But this gift came with immense pressure. Everyone expected him to be Russia's next great champion, and when he was just 14 years old, his parents made a life-changing decision. They sent him away to train at prestigious academies in Valencia, Spain. Alone in a foreign country as a teenager, Marat began developing the attitude that would define his career. I'm going to do this my way. When he turned professional in 1997, Marat's talent was undeniable, but so was his temper. He became infamous for violently smashing rackets, not just tossing them, but destroying them with fury. In 1999 alone, he demolished 48 rackets. One journalist joked that his sponsor should bill him for the damage. Critics said he was too emotional, too wild, too undisciplined to ever reach the top. But in 1999, something clicked. At just 19 years old, Marat won his first ATP title in Boston and began his rapid climb up the rankings. His game was built on aggression, one of the biggest forehands in tennis history, a powerful serve, and baseline shots that opponents simply couldn't handle. By 2000, the tennis world was starting to notice this volatile Russian with movie star looks and an explosive game. Then came the US Open, and everything changed. Entering as a rising star but still an underdog, Marat stormed through the draw. His semi-final opponent? Defending champion Pete Sampras, who had won 13 Grand Slam titles and was considered one of the greatest players ever. Nobody gave Marat a chance. The match wasn't even close. Marat absolutely destroyed Sampras 6-7, 6-3, 6-4, 6-3, playing some of the most aggressive tennis anyone had ever seen. Commentators were stunned. Sampras later said, "Whatever I tried, he had the answers. When he's on, he's very, very tough to beat." 3 days later, Marat defeated Leighton Hewitt in the final to win his first Grand Slam title at just 20 years old. He became the first Russian man to ever win the US Open, and 2 months later, he reached #1 in the world, at the time the youngest player to ever reach that ranking. Marat Safin had arrived, but as he stood on top of the tennis world, champagne in hand and crowds chanting his name, nobody knew that the real battle was just beginning. Because for Marat, being #1 meant he'd already achieved his dream. And once you've reached the summit, what's left to climb? After winning the US Open, Marat Safin became a superstar in Russia overnight. And unlike other tennis champions who lived like monks, Marat had a very different philosophy. He famously said, "If I was the type of person who had tennis all the time and I went to bed and ended up dreaming about tennis, I would go nuts." So instead of extra training sessions, Marat became a regular at Moscow's hottest nightclubs. He'd finish matches and head straight out, partying until dawn, then show up to practice hungover. His coaches were horrified. But Marat didn't care. "I'm not a machine," he declared. "I refuse to be boring like other players." For the next few years, this lifestyle caught up with him. Despite reaching #1 in November 2000, he only held the ranking for 9 weeks. In 2002, he reached the Australian Open final but lost, citing nervousness. He'd win 1 week, then lose early the next. His consistency was gone. The tennis world began writing him off as a one-slam wonder, someone with incredible talent but no discipline. And honestly, they had a point. By 2004, Marat had fallen outside the top 10 and was more interested in nightlife than trophies. But then something reignited inside him. Maybe it was the critics, maybe it was his competitive fire returning, but Marat started training harder while still maintaining his party lifestyle. And in January 2005, he entered the Australian Open with renewed purpose. His path to the final was brutal. In the first round, he demolished a 17-year-old qualifier named Novak Djokovic. Then he battled through to the semifinals, where the impossible awaited him. Roger Federer, the world number 1, on a 26-match winning streak and looking completely unstoppable. Nobody gave Marat a chance. Federer was dominating tennis like nobody ever had, winning 3 Grand Slams in 2004 without losing to a single top 10 player. But Marat had something Federer didn't expect: absolute fearlessness. The match lasted 4 hours and 28 minutes. It went to 5 sets, finishing 5-7, 6-4, 5-7, 7-6, 9-7. In the 4th set tiebreak, Federer had match point, 1 point away from victory. But Marat saved it with a massive forehand, forcing a 5th set. The final set was an absolute war. Federer, starting to show physical pain in his back and elbow, saved 6 match points before Marat finally broke him with a forehand winner. Federer fell to his knees as the ball sailed past him. The match ended at 12:25 a.m. local time. Marat later described it as a brain fight, and he'd won. He defeated the seemingly unbeatable Roger Federer when it mattered most, on one of the sport's biggest stages. 3 days later, he defeated Lleyton Hewitt in the final to win his 2nd Grand Slam title. At 25 years old, Marat had proven everyone wrong. He wasn't a one-slam wonder. He could party all night and still defeat the greatest player in the world. And you know what he did right after winning? Went straight back to the Moscow nightclubs. Because for Marat Safin, success wasn't about sacrificing his entire life for tennis. It was about winning on his own terms, living freely, and proving that you don't need to be a robot to be great. After the 2005 Australian Open, Marat never reached another Grand Slam final. His body, pushed to its limits by years of intense play and partying, began breaking down. Knee injuries, wrist problems, back pain, the physical toll was mounting. He struggled throughout 2006 and 2007, his ranking dropping outside the top 20. Then in 2008, at Wimbledon, a tournament he famously hated, once saying, "I don't like grass, it's what cows chew," Marat had one last magical run. He defeated Novak Djokovic in the 2nd round and reached his first Wimbledon semifinal, becoming the first Russian man to ever achieve that feat. But Federer was waiting in the semis, and this time, Roger got his revenge, winning in straight sets. It was effectively the end of Marat's time as a championship contender. He was only 28 years old, but his body was finished. In November 2009, Marat played his final tournament at the Paris Masters. After losing in the first round, he announced his retirement at just 29 years old, an age when most players are entering their prime. He walked away ranked number 61 in the world. So what's Marat's legacy? His career stats tell one story: 2 Grand Slam titles, 15 ATP titles total, former world number 1, and over $14 million in prize money. He also helped Russia win 2 Davis Cup titles and, remarkably, broke 1,055 rackets during his career. His sponsor Head even gave him a commemorative snowboard engraved with the number to celebrate this achievement. But those numbers don't capture what made Marat special. He remains the only man to defeat both Pete Sampras and Roger Federer at their absolute peaks in Grand Slam tournaments. He had the talent to win 10-plus Grand Slams, but he consciously chose to live his life differently. After retiring, Marat entered politics, serving in Russia's State Duma from 2011 to 2017. He eventually stepped down, saying he wanted to finally enjoy life and fulfill his Tennis Hall of Fame duties. In 2016, he became the first Russian player inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. When asked about regrets, Marat's response was pure Safin. "I've lived my life exactly how I wanted. I won Grand Slams, I partied, I enjoyed everything. That's success to me." And you know what? Maybe he's right.